I have to deal with this with my husband, business, my license,
Yeah. She mentioned to me yesterday that she lost her insurance license.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Based on
Really?
what?
Right.
What do you
On
mean
what
based
grounds?
off of what? Are you confused? What's been going on?
They said she could fit
Wait
an
a minute.
insurance.
Wait a minute.
What do you mean based off of?
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl, the Brooke Ashley, and today we are here to discuss The Real Housewives of Atlanta, Season 16, Episode 6. And before we get into it, let me start off by saying that this was a cute episode. Although Kenya is no longer on the show, the girls are actually giving us some storylines and some real moments. I will continue to say that Kelli is a great addition. She has a robust storyline. I like how she is maneuvering in the group. And best believe we'll be talking about Kelli's Peace Brunch because a lot went down. But Britt, I'll be whacking you several times throughout this recap because between what you were saying in this episode, playing the victim, it's apparent that your main goal was to get on this show and get Kenya out, and you succeeded because the obsession, the way you keep twisting things and saying that you were targeted, you were attacked, you're not living in reality. And yes, Kenya was wrong for what she did in last week's episode, but we're not going to sit up here and act like you didn't start this entire thing. And also, you made absolutely no sense on your debut in the clubhouse.
Watching it back, why did you say it and what do you think about it now?
You know what? It was the heat of the moment. I'm in a rough neighborhood. I'm always used to having my husband by my side. And I felt attacked. And I was triggered by Kenya.
Because Andy did not seem amused in the least bit. And to the good folks at Bravo, I know you watch. Hey, how you doing? How's it going? Please hear me clearly. I think that it's in your best interest to have Kenya at this reunion. I think that we all deserve to hear her side of things, and I would love to see that face-off between her and Britt and put this to bed for the final time. But this was a jam-packed episode, so without further ado, let's get right on into it because you guys already know that we don't have a minute to spare. So we open up the episode super dramatic. We don't get taglines this time around because everybody is still reeling about what the F just happened at Kenya's hair spa grand opening. So we hear a producer asking, how did they feel in the moment? And we start things off with Shamia. Shamia says that her heart was in her stomach and she's never witnessed anything that low. So now we see Kelli and she says that she couldn't imagine what else was on those poster boards. And she says, I don't know how we're going to get through this. And now we cut to Cynthia's confessional where she says that she's seen a lot in this group. But when it comes to Kenya, she holds Kenya to a higher standard. So now we cut to Porsha saying that it triggered her, it was hurtful. And then she says that what happened was ugly and it was hard to digest. And Kenya, I have to just whack you a few more times because what would possess you to do this on your special day? I really wish that you would have run this idea past somebody because anybody would have told you that this was stupid. You spend tens of thousands of dollars on that grand opening for it to all be a flop. Y'all weren't in that salon for more than, what, an hour? And it was already over before it started? That's embarrassing. It's self-sabotage at its finest. And Kenya, you need to hear some hard truths. Yes, you've been entertaining. Yes, you've been an icon. But this was a stupid move. And you played this all wrong. And it's a sad day when Porsha is right about something being hard to digest. Because it was. So now we get the real opening scene and we start things off with Britt Edie. Britt is at home. It's clear that she's very emotional. She's in a very somber mood. She's on the couch in her pajamas with her dog and her husband. And now we cut to Britt's confessional where she says that she hasn't slept in 24 hours. All of Kenya's minions and fans, her colleagues, her friends, they've all been DMing her and it's been tough. So now Britt says that Kenya has no idea how much damage she's caused by doing all this. So Britt starts ranting about how She spent $250 on those flowers. And then Brit says, as I'm walking out the door, you hold up billboards with my naked body showing all the work I've gotten done. You tried to publicly embarrass me in front of all those people who were also mic'd up. And now Brit's husband chimes in and says, yeah, it's crazy that she would do this at her grand opening. And the fact that she has a daughter and this salon was dedicated to her daughter, that's effed up. Now, let me just stop right here. I can always be honest. Kenya messed up. And the fact that you've gone on record to say that you want to leave a legacy for your daughter, this whole display was an absolute embarrassment. And Mike was correct for pointing that out about why would you do something like this knowing that this is all for your daughter. This puts a major stain on your business. And also as a woman, I hate slut shaming. So I think that it's in really poor taste to try to shame another woman for having sex. It was just a bad look all the way around. And what are you teaching your daughter? Because one day she will see this, Kenya, and you will have to explain this. And before anybody says, Brooke, I can't believe you, you're flip-flopping. No, I'm not. Make no mistake. What Brit did in episode 4 was unacceptable, and she should have been fired too. I said that. But I have to be fair. Kenya effed up. She gave all of her power away. She showed all of her cards when all she had to do was sit there, look pretty, enjoy the fruits of her labor, and pay that girl dust. I'm just irritated because I was so excited to have a season where Kenya and Porsha got along, seeing that friendship with Shamia in the mix, like we were really about to get a fun season with the OGs and the veterans and the newbies, and Kenya had to F it all up by stooping so low. Again, Kenya, you could have gotten this woman back in so many other ways. So Brit says that she's been getting calls from her clients like, what is this? And then she says that she could lose her license over this too. Now, Brit, we're gonna talk about that later on, but I said, let's not be so dramatic. I'm pretty sure that somebody exposing revenge pee on you is not going to cause you to lose your license. But Brit says that she's made her mistakes in life like everybody else. When she was a teenager, she allowed her boyfriend at the time to film her as she was giving him head. And then when she was in her early 20s, she did some webcamming. And again, no judgment over here. So now Brit starts sobbing. And was it just me? Or did her husband, Mike, give her the weakest hug you've ever seen? I said, sir, what kind of hug is that? He barely even touched her. He was like, oh, let me give you a hug. You know, don't worry about it. He was like this. I said, what kind of hug? And I said, but you had the nerve to complain about Kenya's weak hug, but your husband's hug was even weaker. That wasn't even a hug. I don't know what that was. But if I'm being honest, I don't see any chemistry between Brit and her husband. And Brit, if I'm being honest, I wasn't moved by your tears because you've been picking at Kenya, creating some beef in your pea brain. And I honestly feel like you're ecstatic that Kenya is off this show. Because like I said, that was your plan from the beginning. Because you had been gunning for her, no pun intended, but you had been gunning for Kenya since episode 1. You just can't convince me that a question about your wedding band got you that upset. This was a one-sided beef in your mind that you blew out of proportion, like we saw in episode 4, where you threatened pistols and guns and all that stuff. I don't play that Hollywood stuff. Like, girl, I understand that you're sad about what Kenya did at her hair spa grand opening, but don't sit up here and act like you didn't already have it out for Miss Kenya. And I'm still not understanding why Brit isn't off this show either. Because I feel like fair is fair. Kenya was punished for revenge pee, and this one needs to be punished for threatening a firearm. So as Brit is crying to her husband, we hear the doorbell ring and it's Kelli. So Kelli, being a good friend, she has some food and she hopes to lift Brit's spirits. Now, Kelli, I do think it's so funny knowing that you and Brit go from besties to now you guys can't stand each other. We see in the trailer that in the later episodes, Brit calls you a hobbit. So I'm just like, damn, how do we go from besties to now you guys can't stand each other? So now we hear the doorbell ring again, and it's another surprise from Kelli. Kelli hired an IV nurse, and Kelli says that she's bringing Britt some bad bitch fluids to get her feeling better. And once again, Kelli is my kind of friend because exactly. And I love a good IV drip too. So the IV nurse lets them both know that she's going to administer the vitamins that they need, and she goes on to ask them how they're feeling, and Britt says that she's tired, stressed, and dehydrated. And now Kelli interjects and says that Britt is also allergic to bum bitches. So now the IV nurse says, oh yeah, I have something for that as well. So now Britt says that she hopes to slow down the aging process because she's not trying to be like Kenya when she's older. And I said, Britt, not too much. Because you're also a grown-ass woman who was in the parking lot screaming about having pistols and whips. So you're not exactly that mature either. So Kelli says, well, what disappoints me the most is the fact that she wasn't like this with me, and now Britt says, screw that bitch. So now Kelli says, I'm just so confused. Why would she do that at her hair spa grand opening? The goal of her salon is to uplift women, make them feel beautiful. So I'm confused as to why you're here shaming another woman. And again, Kelli told no lies because I'm also confused. Why would you choose the grand opening of all times to do something stupid like that? You ruined your big moment. And anytime people think about your salon, they think about this. So Britt says that Kenya wanted her to be there, she wanted her to see that, and she wanted to get a rise out of her. And then she adds that Kenya had been poking her the entire time. And I said, Britt, for the last time, Kenya was not poking at you whatsoever. This was all made up in your brain for whatever reason. I still stand by my theory of Britt was disappointed at Kenya not welcoming her with open arms. Not saying that Kenya wasn't pleasant to her, but I feel like Britt thought that they would be best friends out the gate. And because Britt's feelings were hurt, she conjured up this whole entire thing to get Kenya off the show. And look what happened. I need you to take ownership about your part in this situation and stop saying that Kenya was poking at you the entire time, because that's not true. But Kenya, I think it's a real shame that you allowed Brit Edie to trick you out of your spot. So now we jump on over to Shamia, and we see Shamia in her gorgeous home. She has her chef there preparing a nice spread. Her mom's over. And I love Shamia's mom. She seems so sweet. So Shamia's having all the women over because she says that after what happened at Kenya's grand opening, she thinks that it's important to have them all together so that they can all be on one accord. And I was like, damn, production must have told everybody that Kenya was let go right then and there. So we see Kelli, Porsha, and Angela arrive. And it was so funny because Angela already had her fan out and they were teasing her about her fan. And Angela says, contrary to what you believe, I'm not menopausal. It's just that it's hard to be the hottest bitch in the room. Can I say something? If Angela comes back for season 17, I want them to bring Sheree Whitfield back. Because low-key, Angela is very Sheree-coded. And it's also really funny because Sheree used to date Charles Oakley. So that whole dynamic would be funny to see how they interact. And then on top of that, seeing Charles' reactions to his ex being on the show with his wife, like that would be some good TV. So you already know that they're going to talk about what the hell happened at Kenya's grand opening. And Shamia starts things off by saying that it was a beautiful event until Kenya did that. Now Kelli jumps in and says that for Kenya to try to tear another woman down in that moment, we can never go that low. So now Porsha says that she's seen Kenya act out before, but never to this extent. She was in complete shock and Kenya twirled on down to hell. And now Kelli says, well, honestly, I don't think she ever came back out. So everybody agrees that Kenya went way too far. And now Kelli interjects and says, look, I want to make it clear. I still like Kenya. I wish her well. But if she did that to me, I don't think that I could forgive that because that felt very premeditated. And I'm not going to hold you. There will be no forgiveness on my end either if somebody tried me like that. So I get it. But I'm going to also need y'all to have some smoke for Miss Brit for even bringing up having a gun and a pistol in the first place. The same way I wouldn't be able to forgive revenge P being shown of me, I would not forgive somebody saying that they had a whip and a pistol to come and take me out. All right? Like, I don't appreciate that either. So now Kelli starts asking Porsha, what would she have done if that happened to her? So Porsha starts stuttering, and then she says, you know what? It's not about me. And I said, girl, you don't even have to play around. We all know what your reaction would be had Kenya done that to you. Now, I could not stop laughing because Angela came out of nowhere to confront Porsha. She was like, by the way, Porsha, what was that whole thing about when you said that you had tea on Charles? Because I was offended. And Porsha did not want that smoke because she says, Angela, I'm sorry for that. I was just playing around with you. We don't know each other like that for me to play around with you. So again, I'm sorry. And I said, exactly. And like we've all said before, the audacity for you to even joke like that about somebody else's husband when you are offended, hurt, upset, angry, triggered, anytime the conversation comes up about how you and Simon got together, you always get defensive. So it's okay when you joke about somebody else's husband, but let somebody joke around about you and Simon, or even you and Dennis, and it's an issue. So now they all make their plates and they go outside. And I have to say, Shamia is a phenomenal hostess. The spread, 10 out of 10. My mouth was watering. It's watering right now, okay? Shamia, your chef did that. And one of y'all called me out in my last recap because I forgot to talk about the spread that Shamia had last time. And the reason for that was I was too consumed with what Kenya did that I couldn't even focus on the food. So that's why. But my apologies because I always point out the food in every single episode of every franchise. And the fact that I forgot to even mention a spread says a lot. But it won't happen again. So Miss Drew Sidora arrives and she joins them right on the balcony. And I love how Drew hugged everybody except for Porsha. And Porsha, you claim to not like Drew. You don't want to speak to her. You ignore her. So how come when Drew pays you dust this time around, you had the nerve to look upset about it? I said you can't have it both ways. Nobody in their right mind is going to keep begging for your friendship. So the same way you've been paying her dust, it's time that she now pays you dust. So they're all asking Drew where she's coming from and how she's doing. So Drew says that she has to go to court in a few days. And then she adds that because her and Ralph still live in the same house, it sometimes feels like they're still a family. And now Angela says, I can imagine because divorce is hard. So now she turns her attention to Porsha and she says, Porsha, how are things going for you in your divorce? Are you getting the support that you need? So Portia's giving us the rundown of what's going on. And now Angela interjects with a question. And she's like, but Porsha, what if Simon said, F all this, I want to get back together again, would you consider it? And Porsha says no because Simon lied on her mom, Miss Diane, and that's a no-no. So Simon filed some paperwork accusing Miss Diane of being in cahoots with Porsha to break into their house. So we find out that a few weeks ago, Pilar came into Porsha's room and asked about Simon, and she says that Pilar always called Simon Papa, but this time she said his name. So Porsha says that she told her daughter that Simon was working, and Pilar asked her how long, and Porsha couldn't give her a definite answer, and now Porsha starts crying. But as Porsha's crying, we see Shamia, Kelli, and Angela console her, and Drew's just watching. So we cut to Drew's confessional where she says that a lot of what Porsha is saying, she can relate to because she's going through the same thing herself. So she goes on to say that she wants to be there for Porsha, but because she can't, it's unfortunate. I didn't feel any way about Drew not consoling Porsha in this moment because just a few minutes ago, Drew was sharing her situation with Ralph and Porsha didn't say anything. So I feel like fair is fair. And like Drew said, they're in this boat because of Porsha. Porsha has anger towards Drew, so why reach out to somebody and show them care when they don't like you? I get it. Also, I don't know if it's just me, but I think that Drew is a good addition to the show. Does Drew have a strange relationship with the truth at times? Yes. Do her stories always add up? No. But I do think that Drew makes for a good housewife. And I've noticed that a lot of people can't stand Drew. And for whatever reason, I don't mind Drew. I think that she's a pretty pleasant addition. So now Porsha shares a story of how she reached out to Simon a few weeks ago and she told him, hey, Pilar asked about you, and he just read the message, never responded back. And she's like, wow, for you to do that about the kids? Really? Like, who does that? And I was like, that's evil. But I'm not surprised to hear this because Simon has very low character. So I don't know why anybody's surprised. So now Kelli interrupts and says, look, life is life and for all of us. And that's why I want to host a cute peace brunch with all of us. So now she says, is there any chance that you and Drew can be on one accord? And Porsha says, look, at the end of the day, I can coexist and me and my baby daddy talked about it. We've moved on. I don't want any more drama with Drew. And Porsha, I'm glad to hear that because when I tell you that my attention was waning and my F's were real low when it came to this whole drama between you and Drew anyway, thank God you wrapped this up because I was over it. I was over it like 3 episodes ago, if I'm being honest. So now they take some shots and Shamia had Michael Jordan's tequila there. And now Drew jumps in and says that Michael Jordan is her cousin and her maiden name is Jordan. Now, Drew, we know that you like to stretch the truth and tell some tales. So I'm going to need to see some proof about you and Michael Jordan being cousins. I'm just saying. And we all know how we do, okay? We will claim anybody as our cousin. A few of y'all have let me know throughout the years that you've claimed me as your family, and I'm here for it. I love it, all right? Feel free to say, that's my cousin right there. But my point is, Drew, I'm going to need to see the receipts about Michael Jordan being your cousin. Now, I love this scene with Kelli and her oldest daughter, Chloe. They're doing yoga together and some meditation, and Kelli says that her oldest daughter, Chloe, has really been a godsend while going through this divorce. And I feel like there's a special bond between moms and their oldest daughters. So seeing Chloe and her mom really warmed my heart. So anyhow, they're done with yoga, they're sitting down to talk, and Kelli gets an alert on her phone about a recent article that just came out about her ex-husband. So the article is pretty much about her ex-husband taking the money, trying to take the businesses, and him being in jail. So Kelli says that her youngest daughter still believes that he's in jail, even though he's out. So Kelli tells Chloe that she was upset to see a statement that he made about how he wants to use this time to get close to his girls and spend time with his family. And Kelli says, since when? The way my heart broke when Chloe jumped in and said, I don't know why he keeps saying that he wants to see all 4 girls when he doesn't mean me. He means the other girls, my sisters. He doesn't care about me at all. He hasn't talked to me since. So we find out from Kelli that her ex-husband Mark is not Chloe's father, but he did come into her life when she was 2 years old and he raised her as such. Chloe goes on to say that she's accepted it and she's moved on. And again, my heart just broke for her because we don't know the relationship between Chloe and her biological dad, but the fact that the man who did raise her, for him to do this to her now, that's just evil. I just want to know, Kelli, where did you even meet this man at? What attracted you to him? Was it money? Like, what was it? Because that picture of you guys on your wedding day, you could look at him and see that he was crazy. But it's beyond disgusting and just cruel that this bum is going to discard his stepdaughter like that after he's raised her since she was a toddler. That is so messed up. So Chloe says, if I'm being honest, Mom, I don't think I want to get married because, no offense, what if I end up like you? So Kelli's upset to hear that, and she says, Khloe, don't say that. I want you to get married. Like, don't say that. And Khloe's like, no, like, I'm good. Like, I've seen too much. And I'm like, can you blame her for feeling that way? Because with that kind of example, who would want to get married? And what I love the most about this scene was the communication. And the fact that Khloe feels comfortable enough to even share that with her mom, like, you know what, Mom, I don't know about that. I don't think I want to do that because of what's happened to you. And I think it was so amazing that Kelli was receptive. She didn't try to downplay or diminish her daughter's feelings. She listened and she understood. And I love that. This scene with Drew and Ralph annoyed me to no end. Y'all know how I feel about Ralph. I can't stand seeing him on my screen. Just flat out irritation. But we see Drew at the house. She's packing up to go on a quick trip with her sister because every first, third, and fifth weekend of the month, she has to leave her own house. And I just feel like that arrangement is so messed up because I'll be damned if I have to leave my house that I'm paying for. Because you know good and well that Ralph is not paying Nan bill. It's all been because of her money. Again, ladies, stop marrying down. But that's another video for another day. But a hot ass mess. But anyhow, before Drew goes, she's eating breakfast with her kids. And all of a sudden, Ralph comes up. And the way Drew was visibly shaken up said a lot. Because she was like, what are you doing? It's still my time with the kids. And Ralph, with that nasty smirk on his face, it's clear that he does this to get a rise out of Drew because he knew good and damn well that Drew still had another half hour or 45 minutes with her kids. So Drew's like, look, me and Allison are about to leave, but before we go, can I talk to you about something? So Ralph says, sure. Drew mentions that Ralph is supposed to call the exterminator under the order, and Ralph says that's not true. Drew says, yes, it is. I spoke with my attorney, and you're supposed to handle all that. So they go back and forth, and now Drew says, it would just help a lot because I have a lot on my plate right now. And here goes Ralph gaslighting her, saying, what do you have on your plate? So Drew's like, look, you want to fight with me? I'm not doing this with you. So you be blessed. Have fun with the kids. I'm leaving. So now we see Ralph in a confessional. And I said, bravo, the audacity for you to give Ralph 2 confessionals now, but Kenya got 0. Does that make sense? And before anybody says, well, Kenya got what she deserved, at the end of the day, Kenya was in 5 episodes. She's been on the show since season 5. Even though she screwed up severely, she still deserved at least 1 or 2 confessionals. I just don't like how they're giving husbands or ex-husbands confessionals, but Kenya can't get 1. But anyhow, Ralph says that Drew doesn't pay any of the bills, and it's not going to kill her to pay the exterminator. Now, Ralph, you want us to believe that you're paying all the bills? Really? Drew made it clear that you're asking her for money. I think you're asking for alimony and child support, which is shameful on so many levels, but again, I digress. But I said, sir, tell that lie to somebody else. But we see Drew in the car with her sister Allison, and Drew is venting about Ralph. She says that co-parenting with this man is impossible, and he came upstairs on purpose because he knew that that was still my time with the kids. So now Drew says that one day she hopes that her and Ralph can be friends, but today is not that day. Now, Drew, that's wishful thinking on your part because I don't think that Ralph has the capacity to be good to you. Honestly, dealing with somebody like Ralph, that's going to be a lifelong uphill battle. So now we jump to Shamia in the studio with RL and one of her other producers. I think his name was B Flat, but they're talking about her song. And Shamia tells us that she's known RL and his wife Lena for years. So Shamia goes on to say that it was only natural that they would work together on some music. As she runs off RL's resume, he's worked with all the legends, Luther, Jamie Foxx, Genuine, and now her. I said, I know that's right, Shamia. So we see Angela stroll on in, and I said, Angela loves meeting the girls in the studio, because a few episodes ago, she was at Drew's studio session with Kenya and Cynthia, and now here she is with Shamia. So one thing about Angela is going to move a storyline along, because they start talking and Angela brings up how unsupportive Porsha was when Shamia played her song at her dinner. And I said, I see you, Miss Angela, stirring the pot. I said, all right, I'm here for it. So Shamia says that she felt disrespected and she was hurt in that moment. So then she goes on to say that she's always been Porsha's biggest cheerleader and I need the same energy in return. And I said, Shamia, you and I are right here. Because girl, I know that feeling. You're everybody's biggest cheerleader. They get married, they get a job promotion, they get a new house, a new car, have a new baby. You're there cheering them on with gifts, clapping for them. Whether your life is going great or not, you are cheering for everybody. You want everybody to win. But baby, when it's your time to win, when everything starts coming in for you, you get a new place, new car, money's coming in, you look good. What? All of a sudden, nobody's there for your big moments. You look around and where's everybody at? When you were doing poorly, the girls were there. But now when you come up and you're succeeding and thriving, everybody's gone MIA and you're like, wait, what happened? Where's my cheerleading squad? Where they at? Like, you want to call folks up with good news. All of a sudden they can't talk. They don't want to hear it. They got to walk their pet fish. Be very careful about friends who cannot clap when you win. And when you find yourself in that position, it's time to reevaluate and cut some folks off. And I say that from firsthand experience. When you start winning, friends start falling off. And I'll even go as far as to say you have the most friends when you're not doing well. Because when you start succeeding and thriving in life, if you cute, body's tea, money's in the bank, good relationship, you're thriving in your career, your passions, you just are doing well, you don't really have any friends. That whole saying about it's lonely at the top, that's true. Let me not go off on a tangent about that. But in all seriousness, Porsha, the jealousy jumped out for you not to be supportive of your best friend's song. And like Shamia said, I've always been your number one fan. I need that same energy in return. Unfortunately, you have some friendships that are only friendships because it was predicated on you always being below them or beneath them. As long as they feel like they're doing better than you in life, you guys are friends. But the minute you surpass them, the minute things start taking off for you, that friendship is now dead in the water. And what's happening is Shamia was always supposed to be Porsha's sidekick. And now that Shamia is thriving on Porsha's territory, Porsha can't take it. Because say what you want, Shamia is a phenomenal full-time housewife. A friendship where there is secret animosity, competition, jealousy, envy, a feeling of I have to be above this person, that's not a friendship. And every friendship is not meant to stand the test of time either. I need people to stop feeling like because you've been friends with somebody since childhood that you have to remain in friendship with them in adulthood. It's okay if the friendship fades off. Every friendship is not for a lifetime. Majority of friendships are not for a lifetime. But I feel like because they've been friends since they were, in middle school or high school, I think that Shamia feels obligated to remain in friendship because they've known each other since teenagers. And you don't have to do that. Hearing Shamia say that she's always prioritized Porsha's feelings over hers and how she's a people pleaser, I said, Shamia, babe, at some point you have to be okay with disappointing people. You have to put yourself first. I was so upset to hear that. I was just like, damn, Shamia. You deserve better. So now Drew joins them, and of course, Angela fills them in on the conversation about Porsha pretty much disrespecting Shamia's song. So Shamia says, no shade to you, Drew, but that wasn't your song. So Drew says, yeah, I know. So now we cut to Drew's confessional, and she says, I don't understand how Porsha's moving right now. For that to be her best friend, I would feel super hurt by that. So now Drew brings up Dennis, and she says, yeah, the fact that I'm working with him, the way everything is set up, I'm going to be sending little Pilar to school. And Shamia was like, well, hold on, girl, because I'm pretty sure that they already have Pilar's school taken care of. Like, let's not. So now Drew makes a joke and says, well, maybe I'm paying for the snacks then. And Shamia was like, girl, that's too far. And I said, now, hold on. Because I know I threw some shade in that first episode. I was like, Drew, I doubt your music is going to even pay for a college textbook for Pilar. Let's not. But I actually played Drew's album all the way through a few days ago, and Miss Mamas did a nice job. I said, Drew, you and Dennis did that. This scene with Brit talking to her mom at home about the whole mess that went down at Kenya's spa, respectfully, I don't care. For you to say that she was targeting you and she tried to break me down, I said, again, Kenya did the wrong thing with showing your pictures. But don't sit up here and act like you didn't show your behind the episode before by threatening her with a firearm, saying that you had whips and pistols. And when your mom said she's supposed to be Miss USA, teaching the girls to be like her, and here she is doing that, just stay classy. I said, all right, tell your daughter the same thing. Because your daughter's out there talking about, I got whips, I got pistols, I don't play that Hollywood. Like, was that classy? Because classy women don't threaten folks with pistols. Last time I checked. And Britt, you're not being honest. Because you had it out for Kenya from the beginning. For you to be that mad that somebody asked about your wedding band is insanity, and you know it. Now we see another short scene with Shamia and Porsha hanging out. They're playing mini golf, catching up, and Shamia says that it's been a long time since her and Porsha just hung out by themselves, and instead of bringing up how hurt she felt about the song, she's going to brush that aside because she's not trying to be a Debbie Downer. Now, Shamia, I love that you're a great friend. You're not trying to start anything. You're very considerate. I admire that about you. I think that you're very level-headed. I can relate to you a lot, right? But when it comes to betraying your own feelings just to keep the peace, I can't relate to that. I will blow the whole thing up if somebody has hurt my feelings. Not in a Kenya way, of course, but if I sense that there's some jealousy on a friend's end, well, actually, no. If I sense that there's some jealousy or you're not supportive of me, I'm cutting you off. There's no conversation because we're too grown to act like we don't know what we're doing. And it's clear when somebody's not happy for you, I don't want that energy in my space, so you're done. But if I did want to, I guess, maybe keep the friendship, I would definitely address this. Like, hey, what was that all about the other night? I would not be sitting up there putting my feelings aside because I want to keep the peace and I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. Shamia, it's not healthy for you to put your feelings on the back burner. It has me feeling like, are you afraid of Porsha or something? Because I don't understand this. I'm pretty sure that if Porsha felt like you hurt her feelings, she would say something to you immediately. Isn't that always funny? The people who are the most inconsiderate, rude, offensive, they would tell you if you hurt their feelings unintentionally. But if they hurt you on purpose, they don't want you to say anything about that. Isn't it funny how that works? But yeah, Shamia, I was annoyed that you felt almost afraid to voice how you feel to Porsha. And people pleasing is low key, I don't want to say low self-esteem, but it's definitely in that category. Because ask yourself, why are you afraid of telling somebody no, setting a boundary, disappointing somebody? Because you have to choose yourself, and choosing yourself is going to mean that you disappoint people in this life. And that's okay. They'll get over it. The world will still turn. But Miss Shamia, I'm going to need you to address Porsha immediately. But besides that, I don't really have anything else to say about this scene. I really don't care to hear anything more about Porsha and Simon. So again, we can skip past this scene as well. So now it's the day of Kelli's Peace Brunch, and Kelli did a fabulous job. I thought that everything was set up so beautifully. She had the bar. I mean, chef's kiss. Now, a quick side note. We meet Kelli's assistant, Paris. He's helping out, and one of y'all pointed out on Twitter that Kelli's assistant blocks anybody who likes Kenya, and I went to go see for myself, and sure enough, he blocked me on Twitter. So hey, Paris. But Kelli says the goal of this brunch is to let Britt know that she's supported. So now Kelli gets a call from Porsha, and Porsha lets her know that she can't make it because she's sick. Her daughter got sick 2 days ago, and her daughter passed the cold on over to her. So Kelli's like, oh my gosh, feel better. Let me know if you need anything. And then she says, take everything, girl, except don't take somebody else's man. I said, ooh, Kelli. I said, baby, I was gagged because that was so clever and it was just so smooth. Even Porsha had to laugh at that. So now we see Angela and Shamia arrive, and when I tell you that Kelli had all the jokes, she was like, oh yeah, Shamia, you're between me and Kenya. So they're like, girl, stop. You know Kenya's not here. She's fired. Now, they didn't say the fired part. I said that. But you can read between the lines that that's what she really wanted to say, because we all know that Kenya's last episode was last week. So Kelli lets them know that an article just came out about her ex-husband, how he owes her $10,000 in child support, and he's only made one payment. So Angela says, I'm so sorry to hear that. Divorce is tough. And Kelli says, yeah, I know. It's just hard seeing personal matters on blogs. And I said, well, Kelli, that's what happens when you're a public figure and when you sign up for the Real Housewives. All your business comes out. So Drew arrives. I love that pink dress. I love pink, so I was here for it. And now we see Britt arrive. Britt says that this whole thing has taken a toll on her mental health because every time you Google her, this situation comes up. Then Britt goes on to say that she has her guard up with these ladies because she has no idea what to expect. So everybody's here, and now Shamia starts things off by asking Britt how she's doing. So Britt says, you know, it's been rough, but the hardest part is behind us. So Kelli interjects and says, Britt, this whole brunch is for you. We all want to gather around and support you. So now, just to show you how fixated Britt is on Kenya, Britt's like, has anybody talked to Kenya and gotten her side of things? And they're all like, yeah, we have. So Britt is pissed to hear that they've all reached out to Kenya, and she snaps. She's like, why do you care about her feelings? Did you not see what she did to me? Do you not see what I'm going through? And I just said, Britt, you're delusional to think that these women would not check on Kenya. Kenya is a veteran on the show. She's been on this show for what? 10 or 11 seasons? On what planet do you think that they're not going to reach out to her? And also, a lot of these women have real friendships with her outside of the show, like Drew and Shamia. Let's use our brain here. So Britt says that she's going through a lot right now, and now Shamia cuts in and shares that Britt told her the other day that she lost her insurance license. I just can't take Britt seriously when she outright lies, because they're not taking away your license because you were a victim of revenge porn. Like, what are we talking about? And I love how Angela called out the BS. She was like, wait, what? She said, on what grounds? Why would they just take away your license? And anytime somebody gets defensive the way Britt did, that's how you know they're lying. Because Britt did not even answer her question. She was like, are you listening? Are you confused? Did you not hear what I said? And I just said, girl, take that bass out of your voice. Even Angela said, hold on. Where's this energy coming from? I simply asked you a question because I'm licensed as well. So again, what grounds would they have to strip your license? Because there has to be a cause, and what's the cause? So Britt sidesteps the question and she says, you know what? Today is all about me. And I said, once again, Britt, you're a liar. The fact that you can't answer a simple question. So Angela calls out the BS and she says, Britt, this whole brunch is about peas and you're not coming in with peas. And then she says, by the way, you're failing to take ownership. When I tell y'all, I was livid when Britt was like, Angela, read the mother effing room. I said, girl, who are you talking to? You're just mad that Angela knows that you're full of BS and you're lying. That's all this is, because this energy right now, are you okay? Are you well? You're crashing out because somebody asked you a simple question, and it goes to show you that Britt is not Real Housewives material. And before anybody says, oh, that's classist, that's elitist, no, it's not. Britt does not give you Real Housewives. She gives you Zeus Network or Love and Hip Hop, very much VH1. It is what it is. It's no shade, it's just a fact. I'm just like, you're cursing Angela out for what? There was no reason for that. So Britt continues to insult Angela and she's like, you're slow. And Angela got her right back. She said, no, you're slow because you like to throw rocks and hide your hands. And the way I screamed when Angela said, and where's your band? I said, oop, get her again.
I'm gonna just scoot on over and let you whack him. Get him again. Get him for me.
So Kelly's annoyed because she's like, I had this brunch for some peas and some fun and tranquility, and that's not what this is. So she separates Britt and Angela. She has Angela sit by Shamia so that they can both cool off. So now Shamia says, well, Britt, let me ask you, why did you lose your insurance license? So Britt says that due to the backlash, she's now under investigation and you don't lose your license immediately. And I said, and that's why you got mad when Angela pressed you, because you were lying. There's a big difference between I lost my license and I'm under investigation. Why couldn't you just say that from the beginning? That you're under investigation? Like, what are we doing? So Angela says, I thought so. So Britt says, excuse me, what's that? Angela, be quiet. So now we cut to Angela's confessional and she says, I'm a licensed mortgage loan originator, so I already knew the deal. You have to have more than a rumor to have your license stripped away. I said, thank you, Angela, for calling it out. I knew she was lying when she said it. And Britt is really giving unhinged fan because you continue to use all of Kenya's lines. When you said, oh, do you want to twirl out? I said, Kenya is no longer here. That woman doesn't F with you. You don't F with her. Why are you even saying her phrases? It's just weirdo energy. And even Drew called you out. She was like, really? Do you want to twirl out? And then she said, that's nasty work. You're using her lines. And then Britt was like, no, what she did was nasty work. I said, Britt, we need to talk about how troubling it is to be obsessed with somebody. You are infatuated with Kenya. So Drew says, look, Kenya took things way too far. I agree with you there, but you need to also own up to the fact that you were also in the wrong as well. So Britt says, I've already owned up to my wrongdoing and I don't feel comfortable in the same room as her. And I said, oh, really? Are you sure about that? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you would kill, no pun intended, but it just seems like you are dying to be in the same space as Kenya. And Kenya, the fact that you let this woman trick you out of your spot, because now here she is playing victim and the damsel in distress. Oh my gosh, I don't feel comfortable with her and I don't want to see her and the damage is done. Had you just played the same game for the rest of the season, you would still be here. I just don't understand what possessed you to go off the rails like that. So Drew says, look, Britt, your feelings are valid. I'm not here to tell you how to feel, but I do want to tell you that I wish you the best and I hope that things turn around for your business. So now we hear some church bells ringing in the distance. And Shamia says, can we all promise each other to see the good in each other? And can we all just move on? And now Shamia gets up and says, guys, let's all dance. I feel like dancing takes all your troubles away. And they all do the electric slide. And that's where the episode ends. Child, let this be the last time we discuss what happened between Britt and Kenya. Especially since Kenya is no longer on the show anymore. I don't want to hear anything more about this. Let's put this to bed. Britt, I think that you have some nerve to act as if you didn't do anything wrong. And I also find it funny because you're on a press run right now and your tune has changed completely. You sound so remorseful now about what you said, about the threats in the parking lot. Now you're saying that you would love to have a sit-down conversation with Kenya. And I'm just like, baby, your best bet for that to happen is if Bravo invites Kenya to the reunion. I just want us to get to the root of what is the real issue that you have with Kenya? Because you keep saying she targeted me, she was out to get me from jump. You even said that on Watch What Happens Live. And even Andy was looking at you crazy like, girl, that's not true. You need to go get some help. Respectfully. That's not even being said with any shade. I just feel like something's going on because you have been in a one-sided beef with Kenya since the very beginning of this season. And it's apparent to me that you wanted her off the show. And you got your wish because here it is that Kenya is off and here you are still on. But Britt, I feel like this is going to be your first and your last season. I think it's time for you to look into the Love and Hip Hop circuit. But guys, that was my recap. As you guys can see, I had a lot to say. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening on the podcast. And y'all already know what to do. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you all later. Bye.